Hi, and welcome to That's My Purse Pod, the podcast all about King of the Hill. I'm Jason.
And I'm Jimmy.
So, Jimmy, I'm going to ask you the question I ask you all the time, and hopefully everybody is asking their friends the same one. How was your past week?
Man, my past week has been, I guess, I don't know, uneventful. I don't know. I feel like I've talked about this before, but I'm a big Power Rangers fan. So my friend 3D printed me a Power Rangers helmet, and I've just been sanding
Really?
that. Yeah, just to get it smooth and ready to paint. And it's really just a display piece, but my new hobby is sanding 3D prints. I'm enjoying that. But other than that, I feel like haven't really been doing much. How about you? I hope you had a better week than I did.
So, my week, like the actual days of the week, your Monday through Friday, usually pretty uneventful because I usually work and I come home. And while sometimes work could be eventful and whatnot, it's not necessarily something I want to talk about on the podcast. So, whatever. Because, just who wants to hear me talk about work? This isn't a work podcast. I did. Yesterday I relaxed, which was nice. Like I just played some video games pretty much all day and watched TV, caught up on some shows, all that stuff. I did go out on Saturday, went to the park, got some coffee with some friends, brought the dog along, all that fun stuff. So that was nice. But overall, pretty chill weekend and nothing too exciting to report during the week. So I did watch. I don't know if you've seen it yet. Somebody turned me on to it, so I decided I'd go ahead and give it a shot. The movie is called *Malignant*. It's on HBO Max. It's a horror movie.
The James Wan movie.
Yes.
Yes, I know that movie.
Yeah, I don't know how it got under my radar all this time, but I finally got around to seeing it. It was a pretty interesting twist.
Yeah, I was not expecting that. I feel like if you're listening to this podcast and you haven't watched *Malignant* and you like scary movies, don't look up anything about it. I say
Hmm.
just dive in because like you don't want to know. I mean, is saying there's a twist already spoiling it? Something happens. I guess it's too late to not say that there's. Don't look up anything. Just
Yeah,
watch it. It's good. Just
exactly.
hang on for the ride.
Exactly. Just watch the film. Don't don't look up anything about it. Don't read any reviews. Just watch it. You'll probably enjoy it if you enjoy horror films, if you enjoy James Wan films, especially. And yeah, it just had an interesting twist to it. Which I don't know. That's not really giving anything away because I feel like most horror movies nowadays have some kind of twist because people otherwise won't watch it. Um, some have bigger twists than others, but I can't think of a horror movie. Well, I don't know if I sat and really thought about it, maybe, but I can't think of a horror movie I've seen in like the past 5 years that didn't have some kind of twist or otherwise surprise ending.
Yeah, I feel like horror movies really want that now. Like we have to kind of mislead the audience. We're not. It's not very straightforward slasher kind of thing. I
Hmm.
kind of miss that though. I kind of miss like here's Michael Myers coming at you. But I guess we get Halloween movies now, so
I think it's
you
also
know.
to build suspense because it's like, okay, I think a lot of people, we've seen so many horror movies that we know the beats, like, oh, if the music stops, the killer is nearby, or if somebody opens a refrigerator or a cabinet or a door and it like covers half of the frame and they close it, the killer is going to be right behind it, and stuff like that. Like we've all gotten used to the tropes, so there's other ways now that they have to like engage us in horror films, and I think that's why all these surprise and wacky endings are the big thing nowadays.
Yes. Yeah. I don't know. I don't if it done right, I feel like rarely it's done right, if that makes sense. Like
Mm-hmm.
the wacky twist.
Yep.
So, sometimes it's just like we pulled this out of nowhere and here it is. I'm not
Mm-hmm.
speaking about any directors in particular. I feel like we all kind of know someone who tries to put a twist in and they haven't been that as successful as they used to be.
Yeah, they did one twist or two twists in the beginning of their career, and ever since they've been milking that for the longest time. You know, Scream is one of the few franchises I think that did all of their twists properly, or at least in the films. I never saw the what is it, the MTV, I think, their show, but the movies I think all did their twist pretty well. The third one I feel like's the redheaded stepchild of the franchise. Like that's my least favorite of the five of them, but ultimately they all did it pretty well. It was hard to guess. I think I got one of the killers right in this most recent Scream. The other one I didn't. So yeah, it was. I think they've always done it well. The first Saw did their twist really well. It's one of those things you can't see it again because once you know the twist, it's like not interesting anymore. But then like trying to figure out who's the person who, sorry everybody, I'm going to spoil a 20-year-old film. Figuring out who everybody is or who the killer is and stuff, and who kidnapped them and who locked them up and who's put them into the game, and it turns out to be the quote unquote dead body that's been in the room the entire time.
Yeah. Oh man. I thought that. Well, that was pretty. I don't know. Now I don't know how I feel
Yeah.
about that. I like twists. I'm very conflicted because I want a good twist. I guess also we're all
Mm-hmm.
looking for it is the other thing. We're all trying to figure out the
Mm-hmm.
movie before it ends. So I don't know. Maybe it's a little bit
Yeah.
of us. Maybe
Well,
it's a
like
little
what
bit of them.
Scream did well. So what Scream did well is they do it to where it's hard to tell exactly who the killer is going to be because there's so many like red herrings and whatever. Though I'd argue they've gotten a little lazier over time. Um, but I did get, like I said, I guessed one of them when I was watching it. The other one I wasn't able to guess until the very end, and that was just process of elimination because people started dying off. Saw, I don't think anybody was expecting really a twist to Saw. Like, and I think that's what made it work was the first Saw. You just thought you were seeing like a horror movie where people are being tortured and everything like that. You didn't. I don't think anybody was expecting a twist ending until the end, where the body, the body that you thought was dead the entire time, all of a sudden stands up and removes like the fake makeup from the gun, like the fake gunshot wound and stuff.
Yeah. And oh man. And then you were looking for twists in all the
Mm-hmm.
Saw movies. Like you're like, oh, something's got to be
Yeah.
going on in the back, and no, it adds another layer that sometimes a movie doesn't necessarily need.
Yeah, they all had twists, but I think some of like a lot of them were really stupid, and I didn't get why they like tried them. Like even the second one where the boy wound, I guess that was an all right one where it winds out being that like they're watching the entire murder or the entire Saw house, but like they're watching a replay of it, like it all happened 3 hours ago or whatever, and the boy's still in the safe or whatever and fine. Um, Third one, I didn't really care for that twist. The last one, so I don't know if you ever saw not Jigsaw, but Saw 3D. But there's a big fan theory out there that the creators stole the twist from a fan because right after Saw 2, I wouldn't say immediately after, not like the day after, but shortly after Saw 2 came out, somebody posted a fan theory online about how he thought the doctor was the actual killer. Because in Saw 2, basically, he's like, yeah, the guy who, John Kramer is an engineer, not a surgeon, so he wouldn't know how to put a key behind somebody's eyeball. And then we also see like the guy in the video, he's with the cloak on, he's limping as if he's missing a foot. And so this guy makes this claim that he thinks that the doctor from the first film is the secret apprentice to John Kramer now. And then of course years later when they release Saw 7, that winds up being the case. So there's a lot of people who are like, did they actually plan it or did they just see like this guy's video and say, you know what, let's run with that?
True, but then they added the other doctor. I mean, now spoil from Jigsaw. Is it called Jigsaw?
Yeah, the kind of
Yeah, that's the
indirect
newer, and
sequel.
then the Chris Rock one is Spiral.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Then they had another. I don't know. If you try to make sense of the Saul timeline, good luck to you.
I think that's why it's good that they made Spiral because it's loosely connected to Saw, but it's not. So now they can be a little more lenient, if you will.
Yeah,
Yeah, because with Spiral, it was basically like completely divorced from the regular Saw series. It was basically just a guy who was inspired by John Kramer's killings, but has nothing to do with John Kramer at all.
yeah. I don't know. I guess I want to see more movies set in the Saw universe if done right.
Yeah, I do like the fact that they did do it separately because after a while, the formula did get pretty stale.
I mean, could you see any of the of our cast of characters? Who do you think would be most likely to survive a Saw trap?
I feel like Hank because he knows how every single tool works. So he could probably like figure out how to break the trap or whatever.
Hmm. I'm gonna go Boomhauer because I feel like you need that calmness to get through it. Like you can't panic. You gotta just really think about what's going on, and I think that's Boomhauer. I definitely think Bill's not making it out.
Yes, he would immediately eat like the poison cake or whatever. But yeah, I guess that's as good a time as any to jump into our next episode, which, you know, I don't know if Hank would even approve of the misuse of tools like they are in Saw, but, that's another conversation for another day. This one, we're going to do a beer can named Desire, which is an episode where we actually get a little bit more of Bill's background. Not a ton, but we kind of get to know, like, kind of more so his family background more than him himself. But it is interesting. So let's start. The guys are outside as always, standing on the fence and drinking beers. And Dale finishes a beer. He kind of looks into the can and it says, "Please drink again." And he's like, "All right, this is great." Apparently, there is like a kind of Willy Wonka type thing, or I guess it'd be more appropriate to say like the Family Guy episode because that involves beer too. Only instead of a silver scroll, I guess at the bottom of the can there's a print that says "You're a winner" or "You're a loser." And the guys are all drinking, trying to win. Essentially, this is a Alamo beer contest. If they win not a prize, so to speak, but the chance to win a prize. So they won the chance to go to the Cowboys Saints game in the Superdome in Louisiana and New Orleans, and essentially get to either let Dandy Don Meredith, a former Dallas Cowboy, throw a football into like a large 10-foot Alamo can model, or the person could do it themselves. The difference is if Dandy Don does it, you get $100,000, and if you do it, you get $1 million. Of course, it's under the condition that you actually are able to throw it into the hole and not like miss or whatever. So the guys are drinking, trying to win this, and then time's gone on, and I guess they drank quite a lot, and Hank's drank maybe half of his beer. And at this point, and he's like, "Well, I guess I'm going to call it quits." And then I think it was either Bill or Dale. It's like, "Pour out your beer and see if you want." And then Hank just gives him a look like, "I have never poured out a can of beer, not even to put out a grass fire." Hank goes inside. He goes to the kitchen, which makes me kind of laugh because he puts saran wrap over the beer, which I feel like you would want to do foil, but even still, that wouldn't work. He puts saran wrap and then he puts it in a Ziploc, I guess, as if that's going to preserve it for 24 hours. Um, but yeah, so he does that. He walks out. Luann walks in. She's looking around the fridge. She sees the half drink beer can. She decides to finish it off, and she looks inside and she sees that she's the winner. So I don't know. I don't know if you remember this when you were a kid. I remember it when I was a kid. It was either Fanta or Sunkist, one of the orange soda brands, used to always have this contest to where if you like pop the bottle cap off and it says "Oh you win" or "Oh you lose" or whatever. Please try again or you win. And if you win, you get a free soda. And then so I'd always like walk to the I forget what it was, like a Stop and Go or something, like one of the little cash, little corner stores or whatever. Go and buy a drink and then oh, we won, and then get another soda.
Yeah, I remember those contests all the time. Man, they don't do that stuff anymore, do they?
I don't think so. I'm also like not in the. I'm not in.
Soda.
Yeah, well, I'm also like just not in the what's it called? The demographic for those contests anymore, so I have no idea.
Man, I wonder if that was like a 90s thing. Because I do remember, like, you would have the bottle and you would pop it open and you look under the cap and it would say something like, win a free soda or win blah, 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 or something like that. And then I guess you would just go up to the gas station, give them the little cap, and they
Mm-hmm.
give you your other soda. The best thing was when you won another free soda from the soda. It's a very rare happening, but I've encountered it like once in my life.
I like how Hank refuses to pour out the beer as if like there's not another beer, and then he goes to reserve it. Like I guess maybe there's a way to like recan a beer or something to preserve the fizz of it and the taste and everything. Otherwise, like I don't think there's any amount of saran wrap and Ziploc bags you can use to preserve a beer. Correct me where I'm wrong, but I don't think that's the case.
I thought beers are like carbonated-y. Like they have bubbles in them, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like once you open it, you only got so much time until it's like stale. I don't know, but Hank knew that Luann was gonna come in there and drink it. I'm more shocked that no one was like, Luann, you drank a beer. Because we find out that she is not 21.
Yeah. Well, they do get upset because, like, we see in the next scene, which presumably is either later that day or the next day or something, Hank is upset because Luann stole his beer. And Luann's all happy because she's like, okay, so yeah, I get to win $1 million. And Hank's like, well, no, you don't win $1 million. You win a chance to make $1 million by throwing the football. He explains the rules and everything. It's like, okay, cool. But I drink the beer, so I'm fine. But then Hank's like, well, I bought the beer. And then Hank says, well, let's say it is your beer. How old are you? And she's like 19. Ah, so you're a minor. So you will be arrested for underage drinking if you try to claim your prize. So it's up to you. You can see if it's your beer, you go to jail. If it's my beer, we all get to go to New Orleans. And then so Luann obviously loves the whole New Orleans idea. One thing I was thinking about when I watched this is I wonder if he was purely doing that for manipulation or if he truly believed it. The reason I say that is because we do see many times where Hank will make these like weird suggestions, or not weird suggestions, but he's definitely like a by the book kind of guy. Like, oh, I need to have the express written permission from NFL or MLB in order to record a TV show. Or there's one where he like throws a bachelor party and he actually gets like he gets a meter to read decibels and whatnot because the city says he's only allowed to go up like I think to 90 or something random like that. And he actually like says, "Oh, we're getting close to it, guys. Quiet down." So he's such a stickler for the rules that I could actually see him believe that she would be arrested, but at the same time, he might just be saying that to get her to stop. So I don't know.
I feel it's full manipulation, like manipulating the situation. Because Luann was very like, I'm going to. Because once he explained it, she was like, okay, well, I just throw the ball into the hole. And he was like, wait. Now that she's like, not going. Now that she's like, okay, I could possibly do this, he's like, nope, we can't have you going to jail.
Yeah, I guess so. Either way, it's like one of those things, but I don't know. It's just such in his character that for you to think, yeah, maybe it is true. Okay, so the guys are outside, and they're all praising Hank and stuff, and they're kind of talking about it. Talking essentially about how somebody could go for the million, but for a civilian to be able to throw that would be near impossible. Thank God for Dandy Don Meredith. Yada yada yada. Uh, but Hank kind of sees it as a challenge. And so we're in the bedroom, and Peggy's all excited about, oh, it's like we're getting paid $100,000 to meet Dandy Don Meredith, and talking about all the stuff they could do with that money, like buy put Bobby to school and like buy him a mini fridge and stuff. And then Hank's like, well, we could buy all sorts of appliances with $1 million. And then Peggy is like, oh man, that is like such a crazy, bold idea, but it clearly turns her on. And it's implied that they have sexy time then, but it's never really stated. We just kind of see them make out and then drop their glasses on the ground. And then it goes to the next scene where it shows Hank outside, doing what Hank does with tools, building a replica beer can of what he presumes is going to be the beer can that he has to throw into. And he just constantly throws into that hole, like practicing hardcore. The guys show up, and Dale is like, hey, can I go to New Orleans with you? I want to eat fried dough in the most corrupt city. And then Hank doesn't necessarily say no. It's more like but then Dale's just takes that as a yes. And the entire group takes it as a yes and agree to go on this trip, even though they weren't really invited. They invited themselves. And then Bill's like, well, hey, I'm from the Bayou. Let's go stop by my Aunt Esme's house and stuff. I like I like how Hank's like, dang it, I know we have time to do it. I purposely mapped this entire trip, and we have time for a side trip. So it's kind of funny. And then Dale walks away, and he's like, Bill, I didn't know you're from Louisiana, and I don't care. Hank then talks to Peggy and says, hey, make sure there's room for $1 million in our bank account because, I tossed 42, I got 42 balls in the hole. It would have been 43, but I dropped a Blue Jay before it had a chance to poop on your car. So it's like, oh, you're that good.
I was gonna say I love that Hank built a replica of the beer can, but not just I feel like if it was me, I would have just made like the cylinder with the hole in it. But he goes out and he paints it, and it is truly a giant Alamo can. And I was like, wow, that is the extra mile to go through.
That's true. Yeah, like he didn't just take some sheet metal, and like spot weld it and put a hole in it, and then start tossing. He like literally made it look like the Alamo can, like a perfect replica. It's not even like an askew logo or anything. Like it looks exactly like an Alamo can, just scaled up to 10 feet.
And I also love that when Dale is talking to Hank about the trip, and he's like, and we could all just stay in your hotel room. Now I'm imagining like all of them in the hotel room. Like the whole gang. Bill, Boomhauer, uh, Dale, Hank, Peggy, Bobby, Luann, all just sharing an hotel room.
Yeah, I don't know how well that would work out. Like, I mean, I guess if it's the right size, then maybe, but otherwise, it'd be like, nope.
I mean, if it's just a 2 bed, I don't know. I don't know. Bill seems like a snorer, a loud snorer.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes you get like those large suites or whatever. I think that would be fine, but yeah, like your really small hotel would be pretty terrible,
Well,
I'd
I guess
imagine.
maybe Alamo is putting them up in a nice hotel. I guess we'll imagine that.
Yes, let's think of it that way. Then that makes way more sense. And of course, Dale, it's like, I don't care that you're from Louisiana, but I think this is the first time that they ever mention like where Bill's from. He apparently left the Bayou when he was 6, so he hasn't been back to Louisiana for quite a long time. But he's from Louisiana, and I think he's the only guy not from Texas, or so at this point in time, he's the only guy not from Texas. Um, so yeah, it's interesting. Uh, but yeah, then they go on the road. They're in Louisiana. They stop at it looks like I want to say it's like a feed store because it doesn't quite look like a general store. It doesn't quite look like a gas station, but anyway, it's like a little stop place that they're stopping to get directions. And the men in the store are speaking Cajun French, and So Hank is like, oh, they're speaking some kind of French. And then Peggy, in her very Peggy way, is like, oh, well, I speak Spanish. It's the same thing. So she tries to speak to them in Spanish, her poor Spanish, mind you. And they just kind of stare at her. And then she's like, I think they want a tip. And then Bill shows up and he starts speaking Cajun French. And they get the directions. And then Peggy is like, Bill, I didn't know you speak Cajun. I guess that's because I try not to talk to you that much. And then Bill's also kind of like surprised as well that he was able to remember it. I guess like a latent skill or whatever. They arrive at Bill's aunt's house, and it is a really nice chateau in the bayou. And everybody's kind of surprised, and even Hank's like, oh man, I thought your family lived in a tar paper shack, which I guess is exactly what you want to hear from your best friend. They meet his aunt Esme, at the doorstep, as along with some other people who are living in the house. They speak Cajun to each other, and Bill introduces everybody to his aunt. I like how he pronounces everybody's name with like a French accent, except for Boomhauer. He just says Boomhauer when he's introducing everybody. And then, of course, we meet Gilbert, the man of the house, who is my favorite. It's Gilbert or Gilbert, one of the two. I keep forgetting. I probably will use it interchangeably in this podcast. And then there's three women: Rose, who's the youngest; Lily, who's the quote unquote youngest looking; and Violetta, the pretty one. It looks like Bill is now the last living Dotrieve straight male. First, they're like the last living male, and they're like, well, except for, and they point to Gilbert, and he's like, oh, forget it, because clearly Gilbert is gay, which, okay, cool, whatever. Doesn't really play much, and I guess it plays a little bit into the episode, but not a lot. Hank's working on his car, and Gilbert kind of sneaks up on him, and he's a little bit of a creeper, and he says, like, yeah, I'm like, well, like, I'm creepy like the vines, and he has this very, like, I don't know how to describe his accent, but it's like very, it's like upper class Louisiana accent. Is the best way I know to describe it. Hank explains why he's there, and that he's going to be throwing a football at the Cowboy game, and if he gets it, he gets $1 million. Yada yada yada. And then I think Golden Richards is his name. He's like, Gilbert's like, I know Golden Richards. He was a beautiful man. I knew him briefly, and that makes Hank very uncomfortable. I'm gonna just say, like, Gilbert is probably my favorite one-time character in the entire 13 seasons. Just because his all of his lines and his, I don't know, it's just so funny, and he's like the perfect foil for Hank.
I love him a lot as well, and we don't get a lot of him throughout the series. But I feel like when he does show up, he never. It's like that perfect character that doesn't overstay their welcome. It's just like just enough lines, just enough witty things. They're in there, they leave, they come back for a little bit. It's like he doesn't stay too long for you to get bored or annoyed with him. It's just like he's really great, and just to think that him and Bill are the same family. I love it.
Yeah, I agree. He's just such a great character, and he's so different to all the other characters that we've seen in the show, which is what makes him interesting. So Peggy is getting a tour of the house from Aunt Esme. Aunt Esme shows like pictures of family members. So she shows a picture of her husband. Peggy asks, "Oh, like, when did he die?" And she's like, "Oh, he's, you know, rotting away in a room somewhere and stuff." So he's not even dead. He's just like forgotten and just, I guess, being tended to by a nurse or something in one of the back rooms in the chateau or whatever. But he wants to see. I guess he's holding on because he wants to see the Dotrieve line continue to pass, or the Dotrieve name pass on. And Bill is kind of the last hope, so to speak, for that. And so she asks if Bill's married or has children, and Peggy's like, nope, he's divorced without child. Esme had two sons and then a son-in-law, and unfortunately, they all died before they had the chance to have children. So now their widows are kind of just walking around the chateau, and they all need to be strung at some point in time, as Esme puts it. And Peggy's like, "Oh, this is right out of Shakespeare." So we actually start seeing them. Bill is outside, and Rose is taking him for a walk around the park, and they walk up to her husband's grave, and then Bill tries to make out with her, or excuse me, Rose tries to make out with Bill, and it happens, and Bill enjoys it, but then she runs away because she realizes, oh, I'm kissing a guy on my husband's grave, which is kind of weird. Then Bill goes inside and he sees Lily playing a triangle, and Bill's like, "Oh, is it dinner time?" And then she's like, "No, I just like to play, but I don't have anybody to play music with." And for whatever reason, there's an accordion right there, so Bill picks it up and he's able to play. And she's like, "Oh, you play beautifully." He's like, "Yeah, I'm surprised too." Bobby is now upstairs with Esme and Gilbert, and she's like, "Oh, it's important for a boy to dress properly for dinner." They go through Gilbert's wardrobe to find him some clothes, and he's like, "This is velvet, not velveteen. It's important to know the difference." And then Bobby starts like imitating Gilbert. So yeah, it's kind of funny because it's like, I guess these women who are living in the house want to, I guess, want to be either married or have a child or whatever, but they're clearly all over Bill. I think that's because if they are the ones who successfully hook up with Bill, then they get to become part of the Daughtry family again and get the castle or the chateau and all that.
What is the difference between Velvet and Velveteen? Do they explain that? I don't remember now.
I don't know. Not in the episode, they don't. I have no idea. My guess is one's cheaper quality than the other.
Huh. I do know as a kid, I used to love touching velvet things. I feel like I still do. Velvet just feels nice.
One is made from, let's see, it looks like velvet's made from silk, rayon,
Hmm.
acetate, polyester, or a blend of them, whereas velveteen is made out of cotton.
Ah, okay. So Velveteen is rougher.
Yeah, that's what it
Interesting.
sounds like. But yes, I've never known the difference. I don't think I've ever even owned any kind of velvet clothing. I mean, maybe, but I'd be shocked to learn that I did.
I think I own a velvet jacket. Do I own a velvet jacket? Now I don't know. I Man, is it velvet or is it velveteen?
You have
Back
to
in high
look
school, I had to buy a jacket for a club, and it feels like velvet-ish. But now I'm like, well, if we had to buy it for a club, maybe it's a cheaper thing. Maybe I own a velveteen jacket. I'll let you guys know next week.
perfect. We will hold you to it.
Yeah.
So yeah, now it's dinner time. Everybody is getting ready to eat. Boomhauer wants to sit next to the attractive women because Boomhauer, and instead they want to sit next to Bill, which is kind of surprising to everybody. Bobby comes down dressed like a dandy, so to speak. So he's dressed like and imitating Gilbert, which really upsets Hank. And Bobby's about to sit next to Gilbert, and Hank's like, "Oh, let me sit next to him so that we can talk sports." I guess because he doesn't want his personality rubbing off on Bobby anymore. And so they start talking, and he's like, "So, what do you think about the Saints?" And Gilbert's like, "I'm more interested in sinners than saints, and sinners always look good." And so Hank's like a little put off by that response, and then we cut over like dinner ends. Bill is kind of entertaining the women with playing the Zydeco, which is I guess an accordion type thing, and everything, and they're happy. And we go and see Hank and Peggy in their bedroom where they can still hear everything, and Hank's really upset because one, just everything he says, everything about this place is weird. Bill's getting women the way Bobby's behaving, and you know, do we really want to become rich? Because Bobby's been rich for like 5 minutes, and look at how weird he is. Or he's been hanging around rich people for 5 minutes, and look at how weird it's made him. And then, of course, we get to the heart of it. Hank's a little upset because he's like, I've been practicing, and I've been missing a lot, and tomorrow when we're at the Superdome and everything, and all the crowd cheering. I don't know if I can do it. And then, of course, Peggy's trying to encourage him and everything. And Hank's like, Dandy Don, he's the quarterback. I should be letting him toss it. Like, if there were contests for selling propane, he'd let me do it. So it's kind of funny that that's where his mind goes. Everybody is leaving the next day, so day passes. Everybody's getting ready to leave to go to New Orleans and watch the game and do the thing and everything. Bill decides he's going to stay behind, so Peggy goes ahead and warns him that the women are trying to seduce him. And then Bill's like, "You really think so? I wanted to make sure." And then Peggy's like, "Look, two of those women are related to you by marriage, so they're fair game. But one of them is your blood cousin." And Bill's like, "Oh, which one?" And Peggy's like, "I haven't figured that one out yet. So my advice is not to go with any of them." And then Bill's like, "Two out of three is a better chance than I've ever had before." And so all of a sudden, he says goodbye to everybody. Bobby shows up. He's still acting like a dandy. And and Hank's like, "Everybody just get in the car," because he's upset. And then Gilbert gives Hank a little piece of advice to essentially let Dandy Don throw the football. They go to the Superdome. They meet Dandy Don. Hank is pretty much going crazy over it because he's meeting one of his idols. I mean, Hank loves the Cowboys, especially those older Cowboys from the Tom Landry days. Peggy's even like, "If you're a woman, Hank probably would have married you instead of me." And then Bobby shows up. It's like, "Look, I'm a dandy too." And he reveals like underneath his Cowboys jacket, he's wearing the dandy clothes. And Hank's a little upset, but then Don doesn't seem bothered by it at all. Uh, the promoter comes out and is like, "Oh, here's your old football jersey." And he's like, "Oh, I hung that up years ago. How about my friend Hank wear it?" And then Hank's like, "Oh, wow, can I wear the pants too?" And then uh, and then Dan's like, "Oh, like father, like son," which really, or Dandy Don Meredith rather. He's like, "Oh, like father, like son," which really irks Hank to hear.
Oh
So
man,
yeah, a lot
it's just great
happens.
seeing Hank
Mm-hmm.
like fanboy over something. We I do think we get to see this a lot in the series that Hank fanboys over certain people, and it's just great seeing like him meet a hero in a sense.
Yeah, he does have. We see a few heroes that he meets, like Willie Nelson comes to mind. All that stuff. But it is always nice when he actually meets them because yeah, he kind of does flip out and it's like, "Oh wow," he just like he fanboys hard over these people, which is really funny to watch.
Yeah, he has to wear the pants.
Which he actually doesn't when you watch later. He's still wearing his
Yeah.
regular jeans, even though they brought him out. Maybe they didn't fit. I don't know. But yeah, Hank's Hank. He loves football, and Bill's having a little bit of fun. He's even though one of them might be his cousin. He's now trying to figure out. We actually join him in the manor where he's trying to clean the vines off of the grave, which I feel kind of like I don't know. Somebody should have done that beforehand. Like, are you just letting the gravestones on your property like go uncared for and letting vines grow over it? But anyway, he's clearing the vines because he's like, "Oh, let me figure out what her husband's last name was. Because if I know this husband's last name, then I can determine if she was married or not." And she sees that his last name is Dotrieve. So okay, cool. So she's Aunt Esme's son. He's he's my cousin, so that means she is my cousin by marriage, not by blood. And so Bill gets happy about that and makes out with Rose. We do a little bit of jumping back and forth. I guess for the sake of the story, I will continue on with what's going on with Bill. Bill is now sleeping in his room, and Violetta sneaks up, and she's in like sexy lingerie. And then all of a sudden, Lily shows up, who's also in sexy lingerie. And then Rose shows up, and then Bill's like, "Rose, we're not alone." And of course, Bill already has determined that Rose is fair game, so to speak, because she is not related by blood. Uh, and then Lily's like, "Violetta's your cousin," and then Violetta's like, "No, she is." Yada yada yada. And they fight, and they kind of get themselves caught in like that curtain that goes around the bed and fall. And then Bill turns on the light only to see that Gilbert is like smoking a cigarette in like a chair on the other side of the room. And then Bill is like Gilbert, and then he's like Violetta is your cousin, and then Violetta like hisses at him, he hisses back, and Bill's like, "How long have you been there?" And he's like, 35 years.
I thought he was gonna say 35
Yeah,
minutes first. Like I've been here for a while, but that's a classic Javert line to be like 35 years.
yep. So we go back to the game. It's game time. He is ready to play. He walks out. He sees all of the crowd. He is just like he's feeling the energy, but now he's also feeling nervous. So he just has his doubts, and so he's like, you know what? $100,000 is still a lot. So let's go ahead and let Dandy Don do it. So he passes the ball to Dandy Don. Dandy Don just kind of quickly, I guess, is almost in a lackadaisical sense, or at least that's what it looks like. He doesn't take off his jacket or anything. He just takes the ball, throws it, and misses. And Hank finds that disrespectful. Like, hey, you should have at least like gotten prepared and stuff, not just kind of half-ass throw this. And so he tackles Dandy Don. We jump forward a little bit, I guess, to the next day where they're all checking out of the hotel, and I guess Alamo put Dandy Don and Hank in the same hotel room because Hank sees Dandy Don like getting a cab to return to the airport or whatever, and he starts saying like, "I handed it off the football to a guy in a fuzzy coat," and he's just so angry about all of this. And he's like, I could have made that throw. And then so Don's like, okay, show us. So they take the cab to the Superdome, and they go in, and Hank makes the shot because I guess the football and the can are still there for whatever reason. But he throws and makes the shot. He's like, well, how does that make you feel? And Hank's like, doesn't make me feel better. I mean, it's not the same. There's no fans. There's no pressure, and I didn't win $1 million. And we get a little bit of knowledge from Dandy Don Meredith. He mentions, hey, what happened in the past is in the past. You can't change it. Maybe you could have made it. Maybe you didn't, but we'll never know. You got to let it go. And, Hank is a little upset that Dandy Don didn't take off his jacket. He was like, I built a replica can. This is Dandy Don saying, I built a replica can and practiced this throw all week. I live in New Mexico where it gets cold this time of year. So I was wearing my jacket when I was practicing, and I didn't want to mess up my throwing figure, so that's why I wore the jacket while I threw this. And he said, you got to let it go. And, he's like, I always wanted to win the Super Bowl. I got close, never won, never will, and I'm fine with that. So, he kind of gets a good life lesson from Dandy Don on that one. Jumping back to Bill real quick, he's talking to Aunt Esme, who is now like following up with him about what he had heard from Violetta, or what she had heard from Violetta rather. Esme essentially asks, like, hey, were you here to actually start a relationship with these women, or are you here just to like hook up? And um, Bill's like, oh, I was just here to play in the dirt. The actual analogy she uses, like, where you go here to till the soil and take care of the plants, or are you just playing in the dirt? And Bill's just like, oh, I'm playing in the dirt. So Esme asks him to leave, and he's like, can I say goodbye to the girls? The guys are now coming back to making their way back to the chateau to pick up Bill. It's raining outside. He's standing outside of the gate with just like this big stupid grin on his face, and Peggy's like, "Oh, how was your weekend?" And then Bill's response is, "Both of them," and then it cuts to black.
I feel like this is a classic good episode. It's fun. We get a Bill B storyline, which is great. Well, I don't know. I feel like Bill's storyline is the A storyline actually, and Hank's shot thing is the B
I
storyline.
don't know. It's hard to
I
say.
don't know. What do you
It's
think?
hard to say because like they wouldn't have even been to Louisiana if it weren't for Hank's thing. But at the same time, his is definitely more interesting. Like Bill's story is more interesting.
It's fun world building for Bill, and like we said, maybe like the Louisiana stuff is a throwaway, and like we'll never get that again. But we do get Gilbert again, and I feel like that's kind of a good takeaway from this. And I always thought that what's his name, Don
Don
Marin
Meredith, yeah.
or Dandy, yeah. I don't know why I always thought that he gave Hank the jacket because I always remember the jacket part when I think about this episode about like how Hank was upset that he didn't take off the jacket. But for some reason, I always imagine in my mind that he gave Hank the jacket after they go back to the dome, but I guess he doesn't.
Well, it's cold in New Mexico. He needs a jacket for himself.
I thought it was good. I thought it was like a good like. Sorry, I couldn't make the shot for you. Here's a jacket.
Yeah, I guess that would have been nice. I think. I mean, obviously, it didn't happen, but that would have been. You know, he's. I mean, he's a retired football player. He's probably not making millions anymore, but he's probably doing all right to where he can. To where he could afford to give away a jacket to a fan.
I also like thinking about him making his Alamo can because you gotta spot weld those things according to Hank and
Mm-hmm.
him.
Oh yeah, I do like the whole time where they kind of bond over the building of the cans. And it's like, so your model, did you spot weld it or use hot glue? And he's like, oh, I spot welded it.
Yeah, it was great. I hope they keep in touch.
That would be nice. I don't think they. I don't know. Do they ever
They do.
do? I don't know if they ever bring him up again in the series. Let's just pretend that even though they didn't bring it up, they still that they were still very friendly with each other and best friends and everything like that. We just never got to see it.
Yeah. Oh man, it would be great if like in another episode, like a Christmas episode, they got a Christmas card from him, or they're like, oh, we gotta make sure we send one to him. That would have been a great. I should be in the writers' room. We should be in the writers' room for the reboot.
We should let's send Mike Judge an email.
Yes. Okay. We're on that.
I mean, I think we can come up with a
But
few good episodes.
overall, great
Yeah,
episode.
I do agree.
I feel like we could have like some good storylines. I feel like if they sat us in a room, we could come up with at least three good storylines.
Yes, absolutely. I think we can come up with a few. I mean, I've seen every episode a bazillion times. I'm pretty sure I could come up with something that fits the genre and fits the character as well.
See, I feel like my problem would be I might want to go too deep cutty with it, like some throwbacks to older episodes. Because if we're only getting one season, like if it's just like a special season, then maybe. But we'll see. Guys, start a petition to get us in that writer's room.
Yeah, hopefully. I feel like if I did it, I mean, I don't know what they want to do with the show if they bring it back, but like I know if they brought me on, I would definitely try to make them more like the old episodes versus the new episodes.
Yeah, I might even do something more gritty, like the Bel Air reboot.
You know, it's only a matter of time before that happens. They are going to if they make a gritty King of the Hill reboot.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Eventually, that's where everything turns at the end of the day, and ends up on Peacock.
Yes, though I think this might be on Hulu or something because it'd be owned by Fox. But yeah, I get or
Oh,
Disney
Disney
Plus
Plus.
exactly. Bring it into the MCU. I keep saying they need to do it.
Yes.
They definitely need to do it one of these days. But yeah, I think one thing I did like too is this was like one of the few times. I don't know if I'd say a few times. It's actually in the entire 13 seasons. There's been quite a few times where Bill has like found a woman or whatever, but this is like one of the few times we see Bill like actually do well with the women.
Yeah. Sometimes I don't even think Bill wants a relationship because we see him get women and like women fall for him, but then he never wants to make it more than just kind of like a casual thing.
Yeah, well, I also think it's one of those things where
Well, we can't have him be happy.
exactly like if they did, it would like, oh, well, this like his character is that he's supposed to always be lonely and sad and stuff. It'd be like if all of a sudden like Boomhauer went to speech therapy or something and was talking normal for an entire season. Like it's like we wouldn't want that. We kind of expect him to be acting to act in such a way.
Yeah, I guess that's why they. I don't know if we're going to talk about the episode with Khan's mom.
Maybe I would have to look at.
I don't know. I have to relook over the list, so I'm not going to say anything about it. McConn's mom. That's it. If you know, you know.
Yes, if you do know what we're talking about, you are going to already, you're probably already laughing. If you don't, then just wait a while. But yeah, I still love this episode, largely because of Gilbert, largely because we get to see a different side of Bill, like him actually, finding women who likes him, uh, or find women who are interested in him. Obviously, it doesn't carry over. He has to leave, but at least he leaves happy. He has that goofy smile at the end.
Oh yeah, he's very happy, and then just the way he says both of them, that's just like, you know what? Bill had a great time, and I feel like that's how we should end that episode with.
Exactly. I think that's. I guess that's the takeaway there. It's like, hey, we actually leave on a good note. Bill's happy, and he'll probably be happy for a little while until the next episode. But yeah, I think ultimately I did enjoy it, and I mean, I'll always say it, like almost every King of the Hill episode I enjoy. There's probably only about 3 that I could go my entire life without seeing again, and I'd be all right with that. But beyond that, it's like these are some of the ones that are just the best because they introduce interesting characters, and yeah, I mean, and we see different sides of people. We see Hank, getting really perturbed by Bobby behaving like Gilbert. I like how even like in the hotel, as Bobby's still talking like Gilbert, and I think I forgot to mention that Hank literally just takes all the clothes and throws them out of the house or out of the hotel window.
Yeah. Oh man, I was just looking at the lists for next week's episode. These next two episodes are probably my favorite.
Let me see. I'm actually curious now too. We're going to give you guys a sneak peek on the next 2 episodes so you can get ahead of us. Oh yeah, these ones are good ones. We have Fun with Jane and Jane and Peggy Horror Picture Show, and these are like two very, not just very different episodes, but like they're on different ends of the spectrum because one's like later season and one's kind of earlier, if not mid, or one's later series rather, and one's like early mid series, something like that. So we get two different Peggies. It seems like in these episodes.
Yeah, I do enjoy a Peggy episode. Um, I like a Peggy episode when it's not too hard on her, when it's kind of more lighthearted and not, uh, you know, she's not doing something super crazy. Like I think we're gonna see eventually later on.
Yeah, yeah, we will see that. But yeah, I think that's all I have for this episode. What about you?
Yeah, I think just great episode. Rewatch it if you can.
Yes, exactly. And I would definitely recommend watching this like 1,000 times. But yeah, until then, next week when we talk about Fun with Jane and Jane, I am Jason.
I'm Jimmy.
Bye.
Bye.